everybody, and welcome to my stream tonight. I'm going to start off. I'm just going to wait for people to come in and give you guys a little bit to check in. We're going to talk about romance, obviously, in a different way, not the usual repetitive narratives of late for me. This is a sign I made a long time ago, and it says, love is a privilege, not a right. That one wasn't taught, that was learned, or learned but taught, depending on the day. And to be really honest, I think it's I think for people like me, it's going to be a long challenge, not because of our disorder. It's really public discourse, public opinions, and the general attitudes for people like me, and maybe you as well. I'm going to start off with how this all starts, and this is just theoretical. I'm just one random person. And I am not qualified to have such opinions in an academic sense. Not that I really care about academia. I think there's a lot of theoretical stuff and not practical things. I want to be more apply it in real life. But a lot of people on the spectrum have been historically male. The statistics have been 4 out of 5 cases back in the earlier aughts as boys. So, and I can tell you, I would say every class there was like one girl for every 49 people with all types of developmental delays. So it's just the way diagnoses these are processed, how they get diagnosed later as opposed to earlier, and just the social norms and societal norms have, because it is a social skills based deficit for parts of ASD. So you have you have that going for you, but most of the people that work in this field are mostly women. Women that have a particular biases against boys and men in general. Most of these women tend to have a very feminist bend. There's very few people that are anti-feminists in this field. So these women probably got at least 4 years. Some might have 6 years, master's degrees in special education. So all I know is the theory. I don't know how many sped teachers I knew had personal involvement prior to going in the field, but they did it for a job, I think. So we've learned that girls in general, particularly as the sexism in the red pill has had it, the girls tend to be more pay attention to a class, where boys tend to be more they can't sit still, so they can't sit through academia or longer studies. But the women do that. They get junked with a lot of very outdated, I've seen peer-reviewed, so-called peer-reviewed / groupthink on ASD. Some of the studies I've seen in the 80s. I have some books I got that was getting junked at the my area agency, and some of the stuff is like really hard to read. And in the 1980s, it was really a hopeless disorder. Okay, so the word hopeless is not, I should have titled this Hopeless Autistic is an Automatic Hopeless Romantic. That is actually a subject that I categorize on the blog, because this is kind of, unfortunately, a situation. And like I said, it's when you read old text, and a lot of the narrative hasn't really changed until the DSM revised the disorder. I think there's a lot more conversations around it. Identity, I'm not a fan of. I know I'm not the only one. But so because again, I came to age in the new millennia, so the year 2000 to '05, 20 years ago. Jimmy Cricket's alive. Where did the last 5 years go? It didn't fly out either, which is weird. So the last 20 to 25 years had been really regressive, not progressive. And argumentatively, you could talk about the identities, and the positive, toxic positivity has brought us back to the 1980s and well into the 2020s. So with all that being said, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of disinformation. And a lot of these women will, because again, these mostly women, the men that work in this field, particularly in special education, they're not in there for long. They come and go. The women will be there a little bit more longer, maybe for pay or stability or whatever. So women come in with a strong, very rigid stereotypes when they come in. When I went into the Seacoast Learning Collaborative program 25 plus years ago, or just about 25 years ago, it was December when I started, so it would have been, they had, the teacher had went to, what was it, the May Institute, which was the prestigious place to learn about the disorder. But again, it was very outdated for its time. So you're coming in, the teachers already have a preset prejudice of who you are. They're thinking you are completely crazy. In terms of comparably to normal people, you're very weird, and they have to make a big deal of that to you. And part of that was when ABA was developed way back in the 60s or the early standards. It was to prevent autistic individuals from being locked up, whether it was in prison or in institutional settings. And the way that ABA, and I'm not going to go into ABA, that's not the subject, but because the culture of ABA was the standard of treating autism, of curing it, of typicalizing you way beyond, without any nuance. Okay, so, and part of this was prejudices too against boys. So if you have teachers that went to school to at least 4 to 6 year colleges with masters at least, bachelors at a minimum, with very leftist worldviews, which many of them are. They believe that women should be emasculated and boys should be feminized, and even that they would be being taken to the cleaners. So you had that going on too. And that alone really bothers me, how their politics goes into their jobs. It shouldn't be that way. They really shouldn't. They shouldn't have their worldviews being. They shouldn't be paid to express or practice their worldviews down your students, whether it's private or public. I've been to both private, schools and public schools in New Hampshire. Private schools have a lot of freedom to do whatever the hell they want, even if you're out of district, even if you're funded by a school district, because private schools don't have to follow the normal rules. Some of them are I would argue that private schools are not in the best interest of people with special education, because they can be immune from doing wrong things if they were in a public school. That's just my opinion, and that's my read. So they really, and I look back at how they treated me. They really treated me with my disorder. They were identifying me not as Steven. Steven is, I don't want to use the has autism or is autism or whatever, but there was this perception that the autism is controlling Steven. Like, Steven doesn't exist. Anything Steven talks about is whatever the DSM-4 says, or whatever they learned in college. That the way that they would react, the way that they would punish me, the way that they would they did they wanted to normalize me, but then they talked to me like I was like some psycho. Okay, and the rhetoric was so hurtful, and it pains me to this day because I see it and well into the adult systems as well. In that context, the hate was taught, not explicitly but very implicitly. And again, delayed reaction, trauma, PTSD. Again, I'm not trying to use these clinical words very formally here, so just want to put that out there. But the trauma, your impact doesn't hit you probably 5 years removed. So from Seacoast, that impact hit me about 2010, maybe 2008. So right when I was heading out of school. Then other traumas from the other out-of-district programs would hit me by 2012. So there's different impacts that would hit me after. It's much like getting a literal pain, where sometimes you have delay reaction. Because I hate to say this, but it's a frog in a hot water. The frog does not know that the pond is hot until well after the fact. That was kind of how I felt. Okay. People ask me in real life, former friends or acquaintances ask me, why do I talk so much about politics? Why do I just talk about my stimming, which I wrote have a lot of autistic things to talk about on YouTube. I talk because I just feel like it's such a there are my worst moments, which I've talked about. There's my worst day ever moments. I've written about it, so you can look at those. I don't want to keep relitigating my trauma by any means, but I do think the public perception, the policy regulations, or general societal understandings, if that is political, then it's got to be that, because Andrew Breitbart, the infamous right-wing blogger, he projected this out. A lot of people use this quote, but it wasn't when he said it when he was alive. I argue this because so the quote is, politics comes downstream from culture. That shouldn't be the case, and I don't think that was even true for the time back, because the belief from Breitbart was that liberals were trying to control the world through messaging, through movies and TV shows and the newsprint media. But it does happen in the autism world in some ways, where people perceive autism as a clinical defect, where they'll regulate it through the state laws or state administrative rules, and then through training. It's really a really sick circle, and I really should think about this during the winter time. It's going to snow tomorrow, so maybe I'll be in my bedroom and I'll sketch out this ring of fire, which is something that I've characterized, that the system is a 10 alarm burning building. But between the experts, between the professionals and the individuals, they are getting freaking steamrolled, and the individuals getting burned the most. If we use the burning building as an abandoned building, would be a good example, because that's where the most impact of life would be, is a building that was under taken care of, and the fire feeds the fire, right? So the experts set the fire. They want to create a problem to show there's a problem. And in this burning building, the professionals lit the fire. I mean, the experts, the psychologists, the people that are creating the diagnosis, the DSM class, the clinical psychologists, those people, they set fire. The professionals, whether it's ABAs, paraprofessionals, teachers, DSPs in adult age, etc., they feel the burn, but they jump out of the building unscathed. Just like how the experts, they lit the fire and then they run. The professionals go and run, but we can't follow the professionals, and this is where we get burned because we can't be them. We're aliens. We're a different subspecies. We aren't supposed to run away from the fire because, or walk away. You know, we should never run away from a burning building, but you're not supposed to evacuate, so to speak, because those are the typical people. They can do it because they can't. We can't because we're completely different. And so as a result of that, we have to see this fire, and we just have to like make sure to pray to God that it doesn't burn us as the fire is coming to you. You hope that there's a fire hose and like a big building suppression. Hope that would save you, but you can't run away from the building because atypical people can't do that. This is all figuratively. This is not literal, by the way, if anyone misunderstanding, but it's a whole theory of the burning building that has been burning. And I've kind of said this to people back in the day, 10 years ago. It's been 10 years that I was advocating and became an ex-advocate, was that these things would happen. And they would say, they don't see it that way. They don't see it that way. You know? And so, it's becoming more and more of a problem where more and more people are just continuously feeling as if we're subpar. I don't think there's any level of acceptance until we have more awareness. I posted on my Facebook. If you follow me at Facebook at Hopeless Autistic, I posted something about using the older statistic of 1 in 250 people were on the spectrum. That was 20 years ago. I make a case that 1 in 2,000 people would get us. And that's even a more rare statistic, that there's very few people out here that are really going to put their interests and actually care. And I've been on this planet for almost 4 decades. Jesus Christ, I have to think about that. That's a very hard thing to accept, especially when I had nothing going forward in my life. I felt like the last 8 years has been a waste. I learned a little bit. I learned about narcissistic personality disorder, BPD, cluster B, and that's probably, if I could define my 30s, I learned what this toxicity was. Because I actually got toxic too. And it would make sense when you're in a really unhealthy situation, you will become that. Fortunately, this is why I don't advocate. It's why I'm not in advocacy groups, and this is why I'm not in day programs, because it's not tempting subconsciously, but your soul gets subconsciously becomes part of the toxicity out there, and it's really sucky because I guess in order to make change, you have to be toxic. I guess logically speaking, I don't. Me being the empathic type of person, I cannot logically think how people could actually be in this, can do this over and over and over and not think that would be a problem. I'm going to read to you a blog post that I wrote back at the time. I will try to link it in the description at a later time, but it was, this was, with regards, I mentioned it in the video last week, or almost a week ago, about, Yeah, I posted this on September 5th. I had to go look it up. So I'm going to read this post. And again, it's a very light read, but I like to read my posts to put a voice in the face to my written work. I mentioned this before. It was a therapy place. It was a therapeutic operation in Manchester. An undisclosed police I talked about a year ago, police in Manchester are still sticking to their guns with their clinical heavy social skills training. That was another thing too in that experience. It wasn't just social skills training, but it was also with an EBA flair to it. And zero one-on-one support. The last correspondence via email was the top check, boss bitch type of woman. I'll take it out to my grave. As the usual reply said, sorry to hear about this. Again, what's with millennials and the lack of native medium sympathy? You cannot hear an email in a generation that hates telephony. Really true. So what was her recommendation? Not supported or endorsed, of course, but there was a speed dating event in Nashville. Yes, I want to be on a timed event seeing other people that are just like me, and this will make me feel better. What crack are these boss biatches are smoking? I'll read you the image. It's got like hand-drawn hearts. It says neuromatch speed dating for young adults on the spectrum. I love how they use the word young adults to not infantile us, but then they treat us like infants, which is bullshit. Join us for a laid-back evening of speed dating where you can meet fellow singles face-to-face in a relaxed and welcoming environment. Again, how can this be relaxed when you're doing a speed dating? Okay. It's a chance to meet new people, have some fun, and who knows, maybe find a spark. Quick 5-minute dates to spark connections. Icebreaker games, complimentary non-alcoholic drinks and refreshments. You have to be older than 21. I just hit the back button I just swiped backwards by accident. Nothing's more demoralizing than to go than saying the part of going around being around your type. Isn't that ableism? They didn't say that, obviously, but I put in quotation marks in the post. The desk assistant ends every email with Beth, so I could imagine that broken English as a norm to speed things up. Oh, and I put the Rose girl from the Whatever podcast in here, where she claims to be autistic. She was kind of cute, but I wouldn't take her. I mentioned it in the
just own the patriarchy and say it's based. And just
I literally have autism, and you're 10 times more retarded than I am. Like, I literally have diagnosed fucking autism. I was in the classroom with the speds and shit, going on the bus and shit. And
you're saying words that are not allowed on YouTube.
Oh, listen, here's what
she is kind of cute for someone on the spectrum. I think when you watch that particular episode, she kind of had some signs of it. Rarely these truly autistic girls, like Rose in the Whatever podcast, where said podcast had more credibility. Once had more credibility, yeah, because Brian, I think his name, he's gone so red pill because he's such a beta male. He had to get the phony other alpha male. What's his name? The Crucible guy. What's his name? Andrew something. I'll come up with it at the end of the video, perhaps. From what I could tell with the ladies who are apparently allegedly autistic in my eyes, they're not often in the best shape. Sorry, just preference. They lack fashion styles. Rose is the only exception, and she's in California. The ladies I know in my day program are very outspoken, probably because of the forced lesson of self-advocacy. That's kind of, and I'm not saying I'm a perfect angel either. They don't stand out from my social experience. They don't draw on me, but to be fair, I'm pretty sure there's others out there. Some local folks on the spectrum think that they're cool. I'm fine with that, but the typical fun girls are my type of cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna be honest. But when I mention the Titanic in person, they almost feel like everyone's on the sinking ship is somewhat appropriately acceptable in the state and decline at AST in the granite state. Okay, that's a little bit of a run-on sentence. So back 2 years ago in March, I met this lady, and I said the phrase, I feel like I'm on the Titanic, and they acknowledged that. They acknowledged it pretty quickly. That was another red flag. I knew these people were engineering a negative system, a toxic system, because you know what metaphor I used, and you kind of finished it very quickly, like probably like 5 seconds. Acknowledged it. This idea. Let me tell you this, because as you age into adulthood, you have to be out in the community. Where even if you were 18 to 21 in the transition program, you might be in the classroom, you might be in a work program, or both, or whatever. When you get into the day programs, you're out in the community 30 hours a week. If you can find justifications and get away with it, good luck to you, because it really does suck. I'm able to do it because of the way that the funding, because I'm not in a day program, so they're not required. I mean, I'm trying to get private direct support professionals, so then that changes the whole situation. But the problem is finding the right people, because I'm trying to get like the 2 full-time equivalents. Never been able to get to. I've always had 1 private, but not 2. And then I would not need to be in a day program, and I would just like, fuck you bitches. I don't want to go back to adult daycare all over again. But so for me, I find it shockingly depressing, as I'm already lonely and depressed right now. And that was in September. That was in the midst of my really deep depression. I was just feeling like shit. And so that's a really, like, the thing. Like, I want to repeat that again. That when I mention the Titanic reference in person, it's almost as if that they feel that everyone on the same sinking ship is somewhat appropriately acceptable in the state of decline it is ASD in the granite state. That, to encapsulate what the last 10 years had felt like as a hopeless autistic, should get your attention. That people are okay on the fact that we are in a decline. And somehow they'll find it to be our fault. That is a hard pill to swallow. And and they're getting away with it. I don't see any reforms. I don't see anybody willing. I think there's going to be delusions of acceptance, that we need to go far ahead without addressing issues that are still plaguing school age people under 21, and people that are in their early adults, or people like me who are not, unfortunately, going to become middle-aged in a couple years. Yep, try swallowing that pill. I thought middle age was 50, like me 48 to like 57. I didn't think it would start at 40. God, that hit me like a rock of bricks, rocks and bricks. I mean, it hit me like that. I'm like, and I tried everything I can to accommodate people, trying to accept Zoomers in my life. Try to learn to be around the younger people, because that's going to be a non-negotiable thing. Try to survive and thrive. And what do I get in return? Bitch slapped. There's so many things that are wrong with the way that we're addressing problems. We're accepting the worst. We're accepting writing people off. I'm not saying that people with Down syndrome have had it easy of late, but they, I think, have a better rate of, or a better theoretical rate of success because it's a visible disability. They're not going to cure them, but Downs and autism could be comorbid too. So for someone like me, it's well, we don't want quirky people on this planet, and we're gonna just make you feel like shit for an hour every week to just indoctrinate you what you're doing is wrong, and we're gonna keep a score of you behind your back. And like I said, too, in about a month from now, International Women's Day is gonna come too, and we have to rah, rah, rah for the man-hating feminists that work with mostly neurologically disabled boys in the state of New Hampshire. Rah, rah, rah. Go, go, women, power women, and power women by disabling boys. I mean, did you guys like the whole, like, I couldn't even talk about self-deletion too. Like, why do we keep being so suicidal at 17, 18, 19? Oh, you think it's all just puberty playing with us? Or is it that we're just feeling like we have no purpose? Because, who wants to go to a special ed program out of district and be out of your house, out of your hometown? I didn't really grow up in Londonderry in my high school years. For hours a day, including transportation, just to know that your only worth is your work. A lot of typical people are feeling this now after the pandemic. I felt this 20 years ago. What do I get in return? Any acknowledgement? Of course not. Of course not. And I think intelligent people made deliberately stupid decisions because they thought we were so naive they could pull a fast one. I'm going to tell you something. In the next probably 5 years, 5 to 10 years, we're going to see what this intelligent people doing dumb decisions will happen, because maybe there'll be more voices. I talk very specific about how UBA or pre-UBA was locked. It was demoralizing. And like I said, Valentine's Day, whatever, it was just like, they drilled so many different points, very pervasively negative things to people with pervasive developmental disorders. And when you drill that down, it's hard to recover from that. Some of the people I worked with are no longer in the field and have been so far removed in probably 20 years, 15 to 20 years, but they go on in their lives, being married. My middle school teacher, shit out 4 kids after, well, she was pregnant with one when I graduated, but she popped out 3 other babies, and she's still married to the same man, and she's one of those feminist NPR types. Listened to NPR and was, a feminist of all feminists. And my other middle school teacher, she had 2 kids after I graduated, and they're now in college, which is kind of weird. She kissed those babies while she was pulling my guts, my emotional guts. Or maybe the other one with the 4 kids, because she was the teacher for most of that time. Kiss all her babies, not realizing like a few years before, she was ripping the souls of not just me, but other students in my classroom. And those people probably are in jail. And I didn't. But I walk like I'm walking on broken glass. So there's not a lot of self-love. And then that leads to a whole nother sidetrack on attachment problems, attachment issues, the finding someone to fix you, that's not what I mean in most situations. I just wanted love. If there's more love, the act would be the cure, but even that alone would be probably a challenge and a negative. But I think some of the people particularly with autism, that look for love is for that very thing. They're looking for the feminine energy that they probably don't even know how to identify it, because all they know is women, but they don't know that there's women that are masculine, women that are feminine, women that might be a little bit in the middle, but lean more on the other than the opposite. And I think they can't articulate that. For me, it wasn't until I went through the YouTube therapy, cheated on my therapist, and learned about toxic relationships that way. And that was really what it was. 10 years ago, my mother was worried about me being hateful to women. It's like, no, I was hateful for man-hating feminists that were really masculine, were very masculine, that emasculated me. Because this is the other thing too, because in my experience, there was a lot of masculine boys in the classroom. The problem was, for the teacher's perspective, if anyone was more masculine than the teacher, then she felt threatened, and then therefore she had to assert dominance over the student, dominate compliance over the student, expect compliance on the student, to make sure the power imbalances was still the teacher. Because in just the name of power, but when you become an adolescent, the power is supposed to go to you, kind of, sort of. So who is making them developmentally stunted? Is this actually a woman-made problem? I wrote that earlier on my blog before I was able to articulate every nuance in that thought. But I do think autism is a woman-made issue that exacerbates the rising. Like they say, like, narcissists are not they're not created, but they're made. It's the same idea, but opposite. The teachers become narcissistic through they're being made in the sense of dominance and control. It's like we make them the narcissist, basically. But we don't know anything about that, because we're just kids and teenagers just trying to get through our wacky lives moment by moment. But in reality, some of those aggressions that I went through would have been benign in most situations. But again, the teacher would, if you threw your assignment book within your wingspan, within your personal space, that would be considered aggression, to get a timeout, and then lead to a whole, really, like the story that happened was like days before my 15th birthday. I threw the assignment book on the ground in my personal space. My teacher goes into my personal space, grabs the assignment book, thinking it's like a football, which wasn't, because it was in my personal space. So for most normal situations, if someone's grabbing something in your personal space, even if it's intended for the teacher, because again, the student should bring it to the teacher, right? So you can see there's a wrong right there. Yeah, I hit her, allegedly. I grabbed her at the wrist, and because she was pregnant, everything is heightened. So therefore, I hit her. I go to timeout, get suspended for a day, and get in school suspension the following day, just for something that would be really benign if it weren't for someone who's extremely oversensitive. I knew I didn't hurt her, and again, I couldn't realize the impact I made, but I think I was trying to minimize any aggression. I was just trying to touch somebody, but I wasn't being by any means nefarious, and I knew I wouldn't hurt her, because the way that I knew was I walked into the timeout room, very, like, shocked. And I saw other people. When I look back at my mental DVR, I kind of remember some people were very dead silent, that were paras or therapists, speech therapists, that just they just happened to be invisible emotionally. I think I think it was an apology on the teacher's end. We did make up after that, but it was that alone was like again sensitivity and conflating and using masculine force from a teacher. And you can also make the case, well, where are the male teachers? Where are the male parents? And that's another thing too. But you need to have a yin and yang. And clearly in my younger adult life, which you could argue when starting from puberty to 21 was very imbalanced. And when you get that very young in your age, it's hard to undo it. And I hope that's a case experiment for other people that are going in this field, that really people in the field should have to, like, we should go to colleges to explain our own experiences, I think. And I shouldn't have to do training on new staff every time in my, to get to know me. You should know each individual is different, but for sure. But you should know that everyone's different, and you should develop a relationship. And that's another problem too, as I'm talking this out loud, is that since this is supposed to be a Valentine's Day post, and or stream for that matter, I really can't talk a lot about this because I have not had a lot of experiences on this at all. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of the people that work in this field, for whatever insecure reason, and I really don't understand the logic, the psychologic nature of these people, how they're logically thinking through this, how they are not engaging with these people, because they go in the field in school thinking that people on the autism spectrum are not emotional, they're cold-hearted, so therefore the staff has to be equal to them. But maybe they aren't that way if you engage in them. And I know too many paras and DSPs that were not engaging with me at all. They were very distant. They were facing, particularly millennial aged people too. I worked with a few younger millennials, and I just want to fucking strangle them because they're just so, and I even know classmates that treated me like a child too. They punished me like a child on social media. Whenever I would say something wild, they would punish me because they thought, well, you need to talk to them at like an age appropriate or developmentally appropriate level, not age level. Yeah, I get scolded by my own typical peers whenever I would cross a line. And so two wrongs make a right. Well, for them, I would say it that way. But yeah, it's too many people don't really know us, and that makes it very lonely, because I think the boomer age people are the ones that understand us the most. And some of them don't. Let me be fair, a lot of them don't. But it gets concerning as they age, and then as they pass, it's going to get very, very more lonely, because there's not enough people. Like I said, I've noticed, like, the Zoomers from, like, the Schnoo buddies from SNHU, they are not, I was there several years ago, and I couldn't believe what I witnessed with one of the principal organizers of that group, where even if she knew him, it was dominant. It was like, it was a CPSC flashback. I didn't want to be subjected to that. Okay, so there is this feminist power, this muscle. You can't use any. You gotta treat them like they're trophies, and then they get offended when you objectify them. So it's like you can never win with these people. It's really hard. It's really hard. Even the best buddies, there was a story about them. I posted it on my other YouTube channel I had back in 2022, and or 2021 for that matter. It was I want to live that. That's how traumatizing it is. So it's personalities in politics that really dictates a person's life. And for me, this idea that there's no set standards, that there is nothing that that's someone's a lot of times people are just reposting what other people are saying. It's really just reaggregating. There's nothing original coming from most of the leadership. They're just regurgitating what the DRC says, what the CISNY is saying, what the New Hampshire Council on Autism. It's literally like no one is posting anything original, and that really pisses me off because, like I said, it's like no one. This is why no one's. And the other thing too, with the lack of romance, the loneliness, and I'll talk about rhinos at the end. I'm gonna end it up with that because I really wanted to. I really wanted to talk about this, but I had nothing to talk about, so I filled up like 30 minutes of talking about politics. Politics in the lowercase p for most of the audience here. But one of the things that I've also learned in my life was that no one wants to take responsibility. They want to have the freedom. They want to get the keynote speaker at the Families Board Conference. They want to be in the stepping stones and the New Hampshire Challenge rags. They want to be seen. But the problem is that they get platformed. But in reality, these people don't they can't do the work to actually make meaningful change, like try and bridge us to have real friendships. It's actually better to have it look good on paper for their narcissistic supply. I'm not kidding about this. The narcissism with helping autism people on the spectrum they go hand in hand, but the problem is it hurts the autistic individual. People do not want to do interneurological dating because that would require work. That would require these people they need to pay their college debt. They got so much work, so much people to deal with, so many people to ration services, blah, 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 blah. Excuse. There's always a justification for everything. There's always a reason. See, you don't understand how this works. You're too self-centered. You just you need to understand how it really. Then find someone who can do it. But it's not politically sexy to have interneurological relationships. Oh, that's gonna it makes them more successful. Then they wouldn't need us anymore. I'm gonna tell you that is probably one of the reasons why they don't want to do this. One, politics. One, there's no reward for this. Not enough for them because they want to whore that. They literally want to hoard and whore that because they don't want anyone else. We are their participants. We are their supply. If any ego was to be distributed, if you want true DEI, hey, throwing out a political reference. If let's play a woke card for once. If you're truly woke, you wanted everyone to have equal ego. That right there, no one would want that equity because that narcissistic boss bitch woman wouldn't want to share her ego with you. So the person that's feeling broken, legitimately broken and shattered and empty, is on their own to find fulfillment. And often it's not often these individuals don't have the luxury to go to places like Portsmouth or Keene or whatever, or stay in the North Country for an extra day or so. They don't have the ability to socialize. They probably don't have a social media platform like yours truly. So they're literally on their own. Meanwhile, the boss bitch, will, because again, it's mostly women in this field, very masculine. If this was a man, I'd call him an asshole. Okay, so these boss bitches will take that vulnerability, that legitimate vulnerability, and then just use it for her power to say, I really care about people on the autism spectrum in the Granite State. Live free or die. They really don't. If they really want to make a change, they need to listen. And clearly no one in the Concord bubble wants to listen. And no one wants to make a change. So going back to what one of the advocates said in the November meeting, you have to make it. I remember being on a Zoom call, I'm like, holy shit. This is the rest of my life. And again, this leads to these people that might, like, I can't think of someone specifically, but I know there are types of people that are on this autistic spectrum that will go and try to find love because they think that is something that will make them feel good. They will seek it. They just want a girl in their life because they feel like that's better than nothing. And I think that might be that theory should be looked into more. Why do people like me seek out love before everything else, and often more desperately and more hyper, or actually I would say it more covertly, because I don't want to keep saying to all the women in my life that I want a girl in my life, because then that would offend their ego, because then they would, again, that ego would have to be awkward. And they don't want to share their ego because they want one up over me, right? So you never tell a psychologist or a therapist, or if it's a male therapist like mine, what you really want is love and connection. So I think it's a really big problem, as time goes on, that there'll be a problem. There'll be some guy on the spectrum creepier looking than me. I don't mean that in a negative way, but that's how they'll perceive it. They'll image it. And then all the boss bitches will come to like a national conference to talk about it. Then it goes to the state level, goes to that conference, and then it goes into training. And then we rinse, rinse, and repeat that we have to remind people on the spectrum cannot have any romance. We have to continue on the 40-decade plus that an autistic disorder is a hopeless, write them off, treat them like worse than alpha males. We're worse than fresh and fit. We're lower than them. We're cumbags. And, that's how you put it. It'll happen again. And, like I said, nothing ever comes positive through any of these trainings. Like any of these stuff. The last, like I said in previous writings and stuff, there have been trainings on St. Valentine's Day on autism with explicit exclusivity. This conference or training is not appropriate for people like me. It's to talk to the moms, the parents, the DSPs, whatever, the women. Because they need to have their space. They have so many spaces, they can't have enough. And that's so what, we can point out the creep without telling them in front. But you're it doesn't matter whether or not you exclude them from the trainings or the conferences or whatever when these subjects have happened in the past. It goes downstream. Overt sexism is so obvious that you're going to treat every male autistic as a creep. And you don't think that goes downstream? It doesn't go seeping. We get the poison too. And then we get scared when it's a cute girl. And it's like 20 times worse than if it was a typical teenage boy. and I'm like closer to my 40s. The last thing I want to wrap up on is rhinos, relationships in name only. And I have seen my peers in the system, just simplify it, have relationships. They get their relationship status on Facebook and stuff like that. And then somehow the relationship fizzles in like 6 months. I talked to one DSP back, it was about 5 years ago, it was right before the pandemic, and I said, do you think these things are like rhinos, like relationships in name only? And she kind of agreed with that sentiment. But again, even if it's a surface level relationship, not a deep level relationship, a rhino is a sign of people wanting to have deeper connections. The reason why it's a rhino relationship in name only is because there is no precedence in the historical or present sense to kind of elevate that through training, through support, through therapy, through the therapist, whatever. There's nothing in that lineage of supports where it would help that individual go from rhino to an actual meaningful relationship. Because, like I said, there is nothing there's no precedence, there's nothing in textbooks or research groupthink books that talk about the subject. Because, again, anybody on the PD spectrum cannot have relationships. Said no one ever, but everyone else says it. So, it's a real problem. As I wrap up this live stream, St. Valentine's Day should be an inspiration on professionals to help make this better, not make it worse. Because like I said before, there was one known expert that would do it on that day, literally on the 14th, if it was a weekday, to talk about the subject. And then literally write on black on white, single out the people, because they would get too anxious or whatever. This is like well into the 2000s, and we're again approaching analog Betamax approaches in a world of streaming. It doesn't work, and it's really bad. And like I say, people, well, the reason why I feel like I've been held back now almost like 2 decades is because the environment has made me feel regressed. And the only way to get to a different environment is to get out of it. Well, what other environment do I go into? Let me end it with this too. And two more things. One more thing. I want to go back and I want to reiterate back in the school day. I didn't have a guidance counselor when I was in my high school program. By the way, I had a counselor in my middle school and my elementary years. I didn't have that in my high school program. I think that the elementary counselors were like my therapists, but when I went in the middle school program, I had my psychologist, and then I had my guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor was doing things that were more appropriate for them. But I didn't get that in the high school program. So then the psychologist kind of got more work, and it was very counterproductive, too much therapy and not enough more coaching or more practical therapy in the sense of like how to get a girl, right? Or how to say things without screwing things up, right? I didn't have that yin and yang when I was in my high school program, when I needed it the most, when I was in the midst of my adolescence. Hope you learned from my lesson, and hope people in the profession know that this is important. The last thing I want to wrap up is, as I'm approaching the 1 hour mark, I'm not going to go much longer than this, but one of the things I will say in closing is that I think for people on the autism spectrum, whether it's the pre-DSM-5 or post-DSM-5, relationships really matter. We see this more and more on other YouTubers that talk about relationships. we long for that. And I think to keep denying that people on the autism spectrum are all just these learners that want to write code on their computers, I think it's really much, I'm doing the public a disservice. But when someone is actively trying to get more in their life, which was often drilled upon us to do more, right? That was another thing. I was in my 20s, was from my teens, was to always do more, because you're high functioning, you should do more, right? But when it comes to the system, oh, we can't do that. We can't be their gangsters. Oh, we can't be. It's not our responsibility to teach romance. That should be in the home. But if you've got emotionally unavailable parents, or they don't know what to, then defer to somebody or whatever. And no one wants to take the first move. No one wants to take the first move and engaging to go to the next step in life. It's almost like pass the buck. That's their responsibility. I'm not going to do it, because it's like a union, like a hyper union based system, where it's not my job. It's not my job to teach a movie of romance. But someone has to take some responsibility, even if it's not in your job title, not in your career or your ethics. Sometimes going at one step will make you even a better professional than it is to just follow the norms. Because if you're just following the norms, you're not putting any effort. And like I said, I've heard so many excuses for so many years. Oh, this job is so stressful. This job is, like, you shouldn't even be in this job if it's that bad. If we have to simp for these people, where it's so much rationing the resources. All these people, there's so many people require. Yeah, excuse. Then hire more people. Just like stop with the excuses. Like, that's my whole point of everything. And start like engaging. Like, the other thing too, which the hacks will talk about, is try to look at people in the eye, right? I had people that looked at me in the eye literally, but they didn't look at me emotionally in the eye. So how do you create emotionally unavailable autistics? It happens in the classroom. Emotionally unavailable teachers. Oh, I don't want to get too emotionally attached to my students, because then that would be unprofessional. I mean, really, it's that much effort to actually show that you care about your students. Not sympathy, but a little empathy. Like, you don't have to be strong like a cop in the classroom every freaking day. That's a step to some empathy. And I think the lack of love, lack of age appropriate love, but just the lack of loving the individual for who they are, really messes them up in adulthood. Not everybody, but some of them. But I even if there's one or two people, it's still one too many. And I'm gonna die to that. You could take that to my grave with that one too. I don't think anybody should be left behind emotionally and be just riding away every freaking time. Because we can't save everybody. I know for sure there's a military culture in the DD system where we have to ration services. We can't save everybody. We can save a few, but can't save everybody. And yeah, it's a sucky culture, and that's why I feel lonely and isolated. It's just because these people are so emotionally unavailable, and they don't care. They really don't care. If they really cared, they would risk their careers to make change. I think somebody needs to be willing to pay fines to the system for non-compliance just to send a fucking message. And I don't think it's going to happen. And then meanwhile, Republicans want to cut the services because it's too expensive. Let them die attitude. Like I said, love is a privilege, not a right. I learned it the hard way. Hate isn't learned, it's taught. Alright, folks. See you sometime next week, perhaps. Probably not in a live stream, but maybe I'll tape one. Alright. Take care. Bye.